This is lesson 6, solving equations with variables on both sides. And before we jump into how to do these problems, there's some vocabulary that we need to go over. So first, you need to know what like terms are. Like terms have the same variable or variables and exponent. So my example here is that 14n and negative 3n are like terms. And they're like terms because they both contain an n and they both contain actually an invisible exponent of 1. So these are like terms. If there was an exponent of say 4 right here, then they wouldn't be like terms. Or if one had an n but the other did not, they would not be like terms. So when we're solving equations that involve like terms, and you can see that in example 1 we have that. We've got a negative 2n and we have a 3n, and those are like terms. We're kind of stuck because we can't solve an equation if there's an n in more than one spot. So there are two things we need to do. First of all, if the like terms are on the same side of the equal sign, then we're going to combine them together by doing what the problem says. So in this example, if you saw a 14n and a negative 3n on the same side of the equal sign, you would just do that math. If you have 14 n's and you take away 3 n's, you're left with 11 n's. So that's pretty simple. The problem is, if you look at this example, we don't have that. I've got like terms, but they're on opposite sides of the equal sign, so I cannot combine them together. There's like a big wall right here that we cannot cross. So before we start solving, we'll combine like terms if they're on the same side. But if they're not, we need a different thing to do. So it says down here, if like terms are on opposite sides of the equal sign, then you're going to use inverse operations to move one term to the other side. So we're beginning the solving process. Then we would solve the equation normally. So let's go ahead and look at example 1. I have like terms on opposite sides of the equal sign, so I can't combine them together. I have to use inverse operations. And so you have a choice. Basically, I need to either move this negative 2n or I need to move the 3n. I've got to move one of them. And it doesn't matter. You'll get the same answer either way. I will give you a hint, which is that if you move the smallest one, you'll normally end up with fewer negatives. So in this case, the smaller one is negative 2n because negative 2 is much smaller than 3. So the way to get rid of a minus 2n is plus 2n. So it's just like we're solving. And just like in our last lesson, whatever you do on one side of the equal sign, you have to do on the other side of the equal sign. That's how we keep things balanced. And I'm going to write it here because I can combine these together. They're like terms. I can't put it here because I can't combine a negative 5 with a 2n. Those are not like terms. So just make sure you write it under the like term. And watch what's going to happen. I'm going to bring everything down. 10 comes down. I haven't done anything to that. But negative 2n plus 2n is 0. So I don't need to write anything. It's kind of like having, two bad n's and two good n's, and they'll fight and they'll kill each other. So they're gone. I bring down the equal sign. 3n plus 2n. It's like having 3 apples plus 2 apples gives you 5 apples, or 5n. And then the negative 5 I bring down. And then, like magic, I have a regular two-step equation to solve. Now all my variables are on one side of the equal sign. So I'll look at my variable, and I have a subtraction and a multiplication. And we would always do the subtraction first. So I get rid of a minus 5 by doing plus 5. Whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, I have to do on the other side. And I'll see what I've got. 10 plus 5 is 15. Bring down my equal sign. Bring down that 5n. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0. Gone. N is not quite by itself yet. It's being multiplied by 5. And the way I get rid of a times 5 is dividing by 5. I've got to do it on both sides of the equal sign to keep things balanced. And then we know that 5 divided by 5 is 1, so I'm left with 1n. Bring down my equal sign. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So n equals 3. I'm going to check my work. So to check your work, always go back up to your very original equation here. So I've got 10 minus 2 times 3, because I'm replacing that n with a 3, equals 3 times n, which in this case is 3, minus 5. So I wrote my original equation down, replacing the n with 3. And now I'm going to use order of operations to simplify the left, and I'm going to use order of operations to simplify the right, and I'm hoping that those two expressions are equal. So remember, in order of operations, you multiply before you subtract. 2 times 3 is 6. Bring the rest of that down. Bring down your equal sign. Multiply before I subtract. 3 times 3 is 9. Bring down the minus 5. So I'm going to keep simplifying the left. 10 minus 6 is 4. Bring down the equal sign. 9 minus 5 is 4. So hooray, I know I got it right, because the left-hand side and the right-hand side are equal. So that's example 1. Let's take a look at example 2. So for example 2, I'm going to have 10 minus 5n equals n plus 1 plus 3n. So here I've got a lot going on. I've got n's in 3 places. I have negative 5n here, an n here, and a 3n here. So the first thing I'm going to do is, if like terms are on the same side of the equal sign, I'm going to combine them together. So over here I've got an n and a 3n on the same side of the equal sign. And remember, n is the same thing as 1n, so I can put a 1 there if I want to. And I'm going to combine them. So 1n plus 3n, I'm just going to do what it says. 1n plus 3n is 4n. So those are going to combine together to become 4n, and I'm going to bring everything else down. So I'm going to bring down the plus 1, bring down the equal sign, and I haven't really dealt with this over here, so I'm just going to bring it on down. So now I have like terms, but they're on opposite sides of the equal sign. So if they're on opposite sides of the equal sign, then I'm going to use inverse operations to move one term to the other side. And again, it's easier if you move your smaller term. In this case, the smaller term is negative 5n, because that's smaller than a positive 4n. And so the way I get rid of a minus 5n is a plus 5n. I want to move the whole term. And whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, I'm going to do on the other side. And now I'm going to bring everything down. Bring down the 10. Negative 5n plus 5n is 0. Bring down the equal sign. 4n plus 5n is 9n. Bring down the plus 1. So now I have a basic two-step equation, and I want to look at the numbers with the n, and I want to eventually get rid of them all and isolate that variable. So I have a times 9 and a plus 1. And remember that when we're solving equations, we do the order of operations in reverse. So I'm going to start by getting rid of the plus 1, and the opposite of plus 1 is minus 1. Whatever I do on the right-hand side of the equal sign, I have to do all the way over here on the left side of the equal sign. 10 minus 1 is 9. Bring down my equal sign. Bring that guy down. 1 minus 1 is 0. And now I have a really simple one-step equation. All I have to do is get rid of a times 9. And the way I get rid of a times 9 is by dividing by 9 on both sides of the equal sign. 9 divided by 9 is 1. Bring down the equal sign. 9 divided by 9 is 1. So I'm left with 1 equals n, or n equals 1. So I'm going to check this. I'm going to come back over to my original equation. So here's my check. And I'm going to do 10 minus 5n, but I know now, hopefully, that n equals 1. So I'm going to say 5 times 1 equals 1n plus 1 plus 3n. So in my original equation, anywhere I had an n, I replaced that with a 1. And I'm really hoping that the left-hand side of the equal sign and the right-hand side of the equal sign are equivalent. So I'm going to work on simplifying the left. I multiply first. 5 times 1 is 5, and bring everything else down. And I'm going to go ahead and do all the multiplication here too from left to right. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 3 times 1 is 3, and I have that plus 1 in the middle and that plus to bring down. So on the left side, I've got 10 minus 5 is 5. Bring down the equal sign, and I'm just going to go from left to right. 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 plus 3 is 5, so I know it's correct. That's how to solve equations with variables on both sides.